Welcome, everyone. We are on the record. Today is, what is it, Wednesday, June 19th. The time is 1:05 in the afternoon, and the Board of 80 County Commissioners are back in session to continue our deliberations on our budget. And we have all three commissioners with us in the room today, as well as a lot of folks in the audience. Welcome, everyone. So, Phil, we'll go ahead and put the ball in your court, and you can take it away. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We're just going to go right back to where we left off yesterday afternoon. We still are working through the personnel requests. And we're going to go back. We had passed over the prosecutor's office. So I think we'll start with Prosecutor Jan Bennett's. I think she's prepared. And I think she has some follow-up that she wanted to provide as well regarding some questions that had been asked earlier. Let me get to her. Am I going the wrong way?
Other way. Stop.
No.
Other way.
Oh, sorry.
I'm being told to go a lot of different directions.
There you go. There you go.
Keep going. Keep going.
And we
There you go.
no whammies. There you go.
Okay. So I know Jan's here, able to speak to you. I don't know if you want her to speak to the follow-up items first, and then we can go through the lines, or if you have any questions regarding, I mean, as you can see from, I think, your notes that you have, there's a large number of requests here, and so we need to go through both supplemental requests as well as some requests that are within the initial allocation.
Hold on.
Okay.
Remind me, what follow-up requests based on the merit discussion?
Yeah, I think she had done some specific work because she had specifically addressed you guys, so I think it's the merit
I
whole
think that
thing.
would be helpful to have up front.
Sounds great.
Personally,
I don't want to spill your coffee. I'm sorry.
I'm just cold.
I'll get wild. Hi, Jan.
Good afternoon, commissioners. All right, let's see. I'm trying not to mess up your stuff, Phil.
Oh, you can move here.
So I believe Madam Chair and Commissioner Lacciando had a question, and I think Commissioner Visser was not available the day that I did my presentation. One of the follow-ups that you asked me to go back and do is how does a 3% merit COLA from Monday that you plugged in, impact our salary adjustment requests? And so I've gone back and looked through all of those. We've spent the last, Monday pretty much looking at that and part of yesterday. And we don't need the additional 3% on top of the adjustments that I'm asking for. So it wouldn't be like we would add an additional 3%. This would be the request. So you don't have to add an additional 3% on top of it, if that makes sense, with the exception of two. And one is supplemental 4. I've worked with HR on that one, and that is it involves a promotion for a chief deputy. So that one I do want to have available for to look at a 3% and make that decision. I've spoken with Cassie about that, and she's in agreement with that. And then there was just one other PCN that our salary adjustment on here, we would just take that off and allow a 3% for us to consider a 3% on that one. Other than that, the rest, as you see them here, is what I would be asking for. And hopefully that simplifies it so that you're not trying to figure out how do we deal with the 3% on top of this. And so with the exception of those two, it would be as requested in my special adjustments.
Appreciate that so much. Yes, thank you for getting back to us so quickly on that.
Absolutely.
Can you tell us which position, do you have the numbers on here? The two positions that
It looks
We're
like
filling out.
it's ending in 111. Is that correct?
So the two positions, I'm sorry.
second page?
With the exception, supplemental 4 is position, yes, 111,
Okay.
and the other one is 196. So those are the only two, and Cassie is aware of this, and I think in the system I provided it to Kathleen, so she also has that information.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cassie, do you know what page 196 is on?
I don't see it. See it? Oh, here, it's at the bottom of page 2.
I think you are
second
looking at
page.
something different than I am, so thank you.
No.
second page, all the way to the bottom.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Oh, okay. So, Madam Chair, if I may, I want to make sure I'm tracking here how this is
Certainly.
all going to flesh out in the end. If we approve what we have feathered in there for now, a total 3%, you'd be able to incorporate that, hold some of these, or not do that on top of this.
Correct.
Cassie, if I may ask you to address how we're going to promote equity across the county. Are we good? Can you talk about how we'll be asking departments and offices to look at this?
I'm not sure I understand the complete question on
I don't think
this,
I
but
fully understand what I'm asking either, but
the requests that Prosecutor Bennett has requested, I think they're within the general range. I feel they're within the range currently and would also be within the range with her requests. And so I think for her to give this as the total, we can monitor that as it comes through,
Okay.
just to make sure that's the final pay. I feel like that would be an equitable solution.
okay. And for all of our other departments and offices, unless it is a special salary adjustment that was specific from the HR request for equity purposes, we wouldn't necessarily be looking at the additional 2% merit.
That would be a board decision, yes.
I understand that, yes. Okay.
Okay, are you
I-
good? Okay.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
Commissioner LaChant, on that point, for all the other ones, we haven't gone through and had that same analysis done that Prosecutor Bennett's just said. And so what our recommendation is that we would still just budget that 3% and then work with HR to make sure they can go through individually and make sure that is appropriate or not. And then we would just encumber the funds that aren't used
Okay.
to
And
lock it up.
auditor's encumbrance?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. We talked about that yesterday. That
Okay.
works. Okay. So, Jan, I just have a quick question for you. I'm sorry.
No, don't be sorry. Run up here.
On the new
Yes, Madam Chair.
positions, my understanding on the new positions are all due to the 3 new judges. Is that correct?
Yes, with the exception of the public information officer. That one is not due to the new judges.
Do we have some kind of staffing standard for each time a new judge comes on? What's the protocol?
Madam Chair, Commissioners, Commissioner Lachiondo, there's not a specific, it does depend on kind of caseload and who's doing what and where they're assigned. And for example, a district court judge, the general rule is it takes 2 prosecutors and a legal assistant to support at 1 district judge. But for example, we have a team right now where they have 1 district judge, 2 prosecutors and a legal assistant, and they're not able to necessarily keep up. We're probably going to have to, with new people, kind of assess that and juggle. I can tell you that it is, and I'm sure Mr. Geddes would agree with this, it is a constant that we are looking at where we have to pull people based on caseloads. Different judges have different caseloads, particularly in the district court realm. I think that is where it's a concept, pulling their numbers, figuring out how many case assignments we give to individual attorneys, what's too much, what's not enough. And again, kind of hearkening back to my presentation, depends also on the caseload. If it's, a homicide case and there is more to that, then, maybe something else. So the long answer is there's not really a standard, but we kind of have guidelines and things that we can look at to determine that. And pulling the court numbers and seeing how many cases they have and things like that and what they get assigned helps us do that.
Thank you.
Yes.
Question?
I do, Madam Chair. Yeah, Anthony, you may be able to help us out on this one. Can you total up all of the salary increases, excluding the 8 new positions? So it's that column salary increase.
I think I may have, let me see here, if you have it close.
Might be able to do it on the screen real quick.
Okay, I'll let you try. I can see the total here, but it may not be consistent.
You want just the ones that are supplementals or all of them?
No, all of them except new positions.
All of them
right?
except the new positions, yeah, get a running total on that, please.
$318,715.
Okay.
318,
715.
715. Okay. And the reclassifications, we have a lot of reclassifications here. Are those moving from legal 1 to legal 2? Is that a promotion or basically because they're doing more work, or is that after you talked with HR and our levels and kinds, they needed to move?
So, Madam Chair, Commissioners, and I can certainly, I have Bethany here as well to help me with kind of our preliminary work before we put it through to HR in terms of the methodology and what we looked at in trying to determine the kinds and levels. I think, as you recall from my presentation, after I took over, we began doing kinds and levels working with HR in order to get the kind of what you all are talking about doing. We did not have that within my office at the time I took over. So we started that process back in probably 2015, 16, and developed for attorneys levels and for support staff levels so that we have a career path. We have people, level 1 through 2, 3, 4, 5, so that we could do, I think, what you all are looking at doing countywide.
Okay.
And so this is part of that. Back in 16 and 15, we had high turnover. We were losing, I think you recall from my presentation, support staff, attorneys. And so that's when I went to HR and said, hey, could you help me with, first of all, stopping the bleeding? And then second of all, can we start a pathway so that I have a place to be consistent and equitable within Ada County? So each level has a band or, pay, mid-range and top range. And so within like a level 1, there's a, low range, mid-range, and then a cap. So this is part of this overall plan that we've been working toward. And then this last year had Bethany help me to kind of look at where are we, where do we need to go this year to kind of get us, again, to stop the bleeding. We do continue to have turnover and losing people, as I talked about. In fact, one this week, an attorney is going to the AG's office for 15% more, and he started 6 months ago. So that's kind of what I'm looking at. These adjustments are only for support staff and for the attorney 1s and 2s. So it's not across the entire office, but it is getting us where I think I can start in a place to continue to work with you on the kinds and levels going forward, and within what I think, as Cassie said, is equitable within the county and also within our system.
So it looks like you're creating not only internal equity, but being competitive in the marketplace. What's your attrition rate? What was it this last year? Do you remember?
I might have to have my expert help me on that.
You're calling your lifeline now.
Calling my
Madam Chair, Commissioners, as far as the history of the turnover for Prosecutor's Office, FY18, it was 15.7%. There was a large dip in FY17, 11.4. The peak in FY16 was 22.5, and that was the lead up to which the prior adjustments in which Jan worked with HR at that time to make these adjustments did come into play.
Okay. And there's a high cost for turnover, as we well know, especially in an office like this.
There is. Yeah, I was reminded of that this week. Like I said, one of our attorneys has only been with us since November and is already moving on. And so I'm trying to get a handle on that. And I think actually, as Commissioner Visser mentioned on Monday, part of what we've been seeing is compression. And you had talked about that, and I think that really is part of it. So we have people who are starting. We've had the COLAs, so they're starting. And then people who have been with us for 1 to 2 years are seeing that they're making the same amount as a starting. And so that has, and it kind of bubbles up, which is why there's so many here, because if I move, we have starting here, if I move people here to bump them up, then they're bumping into the next level. So that's why you see the volume, is because we've had to look at all of them, because if I pull one or change one, it just, as you all know, it impacts everyone. And I have been working very hard and diligently to use salary savings to do this, so that, when I come to you, I've used my salary savings to, work office-wide. I can say I am very excited about, getting in a place to stop the bleeding, and then hopefully now moving forward, it will dovetail nicely with the work that you want to do, and I'm certainly supportive of that, and will help in any way I can to make that work as well. So,
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Question.
Of
For
course.
Bethany, on the figures that you gave us, does that include retirees, or are they counted separately?
Madam Chair and Commissioners, this is the overall turnover. I can tell you, in looking at these numbers real quick, as far as the number of retirements in that same time period, for FY18, there were 2, FY17, 0, FY16, 4, FY15, 1, then 2, and 2
Yeah.
back until 13.
Great, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Well, we certainly want to retain the best and the brightest here. So,
Madam Chair, I have just a little question, actually. So I'm seeing on, I guess it's my page, towards the very end, if you want to scroll down, before we get to archive clerks, if you could scroll down on there, Phil. Yeah, stay here, please.
I'm just going to look at, so I can see what you're seeing.
Maybe, yes, there it is. What is the executive director of the, I assume it's Idaho Prosecutor Attorneys Association, and why are we paying for that salary?
We're actually not there. This is a pass-through to them. They have had, I guess, relationship with Ada County as far as being a pass-through for 30 years or so, is my understanding. So prior boards have allowed Ada County to kind of be the pass-through, so that all of that is no cost to the county in terms of you're not paying that salary. That is kind of like IAC has dues, so the county prosecutors across the state of Idaho pay dues to IPAA, and so Ada County is the home base, I guess, for that, and so it just passes through, and it's all reimbursed back to the county through IPAA.
okay, so we're just reimbursed.
It's on a reimbursement. I think it's invoiced, and I can get quarterly.
Okay. So any increase that we do has already been voted on by that board, and they've approved those funds, and that's?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct, but it doesn't, right, you're not paying the salary, it has nothing, does not, I mean, I pay dues for
Right.
being a member, but it's reimbursed, and, yeah,
Okay. Thank you.
you bet.
And is that position an Ada County employee, or can it be any prosecutor in the state?
It is, I think because I don't know that I would call it Ada County employee, it probably could go to any other prosecutor in the state, but home base has been here. My understanding of how it works is she's an IPAA employee, and so it's kind of like Seth Gregg, not really a county employee, but probably, I mean, he probably could be housed anywhere else other than ICRIMP and where he's at, but I think, and I don't understand the IAC funding as well, but I think the membership dues pay for his position as well.
They do, but we don't have an entry for Seth on our budget sheets.
Correct. Right. I think probably she could be housed somewhere else. I think over the years, Ada County has kind of received the benefit of having IPAA sort of at our fingertips and helping with, being in the hub, so to speak.
Good enough, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else?
I have some additional comments, but I don't know.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, as you know, we have received a fair amount of emails, and I believe you've received more, from folks who are concerned about a particular case and prosecuting the folks transporting hemp. I take you at your word that that's a very minimal amount of what we do, and I also respect your authority and your diligence and how you're handling that, and it's not my job to supersede that. It is my job and budget authority. So the only thing it calls into question for me, and it not being an attorney, obviously, as we look at new positions, it does call into question for me, what types of cases are we prosecuting? And not knowing that, that's a conversation, not for this moment necessarily, but one that I'd like to engage with you, because it just makes me wonder, are there cases that we are prosecuting that don't need to be? I don't know, but if that is driving some increased cost to the county, I want to understand that. But again, I take you at your word, and I respect your authority and your integrity. I do feel that having been asked to ask these questions, I'm going to ask them.
Certainly, and certainly, happy to go back through the presentation in terms of the types of cases that I've talked about that we're handling. I think that, certainly public safety is at the top of my list of ensuring that the public is safe. And as I think, just to harken back a bit to what I said back then, 2 weeks ago when we had this discussion, I am doing my level best to, with integrity and professionalism, handle these cases like I do all other cases, which is based on individual people involved, individual facts and the law, and make just, fair decisions in every case, every day. That is top priority, and that's what I do, and believe that I do it well, in all fairness.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, appreciate that.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
No, ma'am.
Okay,
Thank you.
great, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Clerk Brain?
You want to go back up to the top, or how do you want to take these on?
I would say I'm okay with all of them.
It's a big number, but I have witnessed and have watched Prosecutor Bennett's work really hard to try and create, a great team environment, and also, really be thoughtful about how she's attracting and retaining employees. So while it is, it gives me pause, I'm hopeful that it sets us on a path to stop the bleeding. We do run the paramedics. Maybe we should use a different term. I'm very appreciative of the work that's been done to help bring us up to a level so that we can keep our top talent. So I would concur that I'm supportive of the requests.
Yeah, I'm also fine with this too, because as you look at it as an overall picture, there are significant adjustments, and when you come up with that figure of 318,000, to me, that really isn't that bad to get where we want to be. And we're not top-heavy with new positions, so the balancing I've done on that is I'm okay with as submitted.
Okay. Can move on then. Where are you taking us now?
Yeah. Next is Development Services. You can see all of their requests on the screen in front of you. 4 new positions, 2 special salary adjustments, one of which is within the initial allocation. It's actually, yeah. And then one that is a recommendation by HR.
Wasn't, and maybe Meg's here, wasn't one of these positions for a transportation specialist, if I recall?
I believe one of the community and regional planner, 2 of them, if I'm gonna paraphrase for you, Meg, tell me if I'm wrong. 2 of them were in support of the creation of the regional plan. One of them was specific to transportation. Is that
Among the 3.
among the 3? Is that?
Is that correct, Meg?
Yes.
Okay. And it looks like the salaries are close to the same. So can you refresh our memories? We know on the regional planner what the specific job duties would be, but I would like a refresher on the one that is identified specific for transportation.
Okay, Madam Chair, Commissioners. So for the transportation planner, basically they would be working with ACHD on a variety of tasks and ITD and VRT. So a couple of the things that they would be focusing on would be with the neighborhood plans. ACHD twice a year creates neighborhood plans with implementation items, and they could help with that, and that would be one thing that would be really good, I think, for the community. ACHD also every year requests our input on their 5-year work plan, and so we would be able to participate in that in a more detailed fashion. As the 5-year work plan has capital projects and also community programs, and the capital projects are for intersections and highway road improvements, and the community programs are for like bicycle, transit, and pedestrians, and also they also actually can vary quite significantly, and so we could actually do a little bit of history on what they've approved in the past and kind of cater it to our needs. And because we've led the master facilities plan, I think that our department has a little bit more knowledge to be able to also not only look at unincorporated, but we could also look at how this could benefit the county facilities as well. So keeping that in mind, it wouldn't just be unincorporated areas, but we could see how we could also improve some of the transportation areas around the county facilities and transit access and things like that. Also, the transportation planner, let's have some notes. They do, before they go out and do construction, they'll have, or design, they'll have project team meetings, and we could participate in that. This transportation planner could. They could also participate in the design meetings where the transportation planner, if they're more familiar with the ACHD policy manual or the ITD policy manual, where there's areas of wiggle room, they could actually help to relay more of the vision of the neighborhood into the design of the transportation aspects that the ACHD or ITD is going to implement into the widening of the road or whatever they're doing, the intersection improvements. And then more of kind of logistically, just development application review. When they submit and you guys see this probably more often, but when they submit the traffic studies, we could have the planner review the traffic studies, and because they would be more familiar with the ACHD policies.
Thank you. Any other questions on the transportation?
Not on transportation, I do on another position.
Did you have
On
questions
on the transportation one, I think I can really see the value. I also think as we think about local governments in this valley, one of the things folks talk about with ACHD is that they're saving money. We save money by having a countywide transportation department. This is where this sometimes is not always the case, because I think now we would be the third or fourth governmental entity who would have to have our own transportation planner to figure out what ACHD is doing. So I struggle with that. Ideally, we would have ACHD planners working for us in the sense they'd be working with our land use planners and really receiving their direction from our land use planners as what we want to see. But I know that's not always the case. So I struggle with that. It feels like we'd be paying money for, to supplement another organization. But
So Meg, I'm just wondering, I don't know how active, we've had members on the Citizens Advisory Committee, and we're looking at adding a member to that ACHD committee. And I've heard, I don't know this, but that committee has not really been that active and participatory in the process. Is this an opportunity for us to provide possibly some of these same sorts of services, adding value to our relationship with ACHD?
Madam Chair, this person could definitely help support that position. And just, Madam Chair, just to speak to Commissioner Lasciando's concerns to some degree, I think the difference would be that they would be able to kind of address and work with the neighborhood in the more case-specific or neighborhood context and matching up the neighborhood more with the transportation. So we're talking about land use and transportation meshing up, where there's no land use planners that work at ACHD.
Oh,
So
I understand that.
yeah. But in just to throw this out there, and I think I'd be willing to remove one of the transportation planner position. And when I went back and I was speaking with my staff, I pulled the managers together when you guys were struggling about the budget. I think with Mitra, with the 2 community and regional planner positions, that we could probably fold this in with one of those positions, the same responsibilities. Probably not right at first when we're working on the community and regional plan, but once it's actually finished and the implementation begins, then we could do that if the board was willing. Then we could have them focus on the transportation planning aspects of it if the board was willing to wait for that piece.
I think if that's the way we go, we have to be cognizant that our staff doesn't have the ability to do its own traffic, review the traffic impact analysis, all of those pieces and parts. We have to rely on ACHD to do that for us right now if we're not going to hire them ourselves, and that's the sort of yin and the yang there.
There are a lot of crunching of numbers though when ACHD does that. So we do, whether we like it or not, we're gonna have to rely on their personnel to pull that off. However, I'm thankful that Megan made that suggestion that in a transition phase, and then once you're settled in, one of these other planners could take on that role.
Okay. So Meg, we've had this conversation, you've been listening to the budget deliberations, that potentially there could be a downturn in the economy. And so as we ramp up, we don't want to put development services, you in a position where you're having to lay someone off. So having 3 regional planners come on all at the same time, when we possibly are at the peak, leaves me a little concerned.
Yeah, Madam Chair, Commissioners, definitely. That is always on my mind every day. I was here during that time period. I've worked for the county for 12 years. I've was here one day when we had laid off 15 people in my department. So I understand that. I've put great thought into that. I think that if we are going to do the regional plan, that we are going to have the staff to continue it on. It is one of those things that we can't just create it and not continue implement it and continue to keep it going. It's something that is going to be a living document that's going to have to continue on.
Thank you.
There's no.
I know you went through that, so.
Yeah.
And I know you're very sensitive to having to face that.
More than anybody, you bear the shrapnel from
scars,
Yes, I do.
Yeah, okay. We ready to
Well,
hear your
a
name?
further question, if I could, Madam
sure.
Chair. What is the position here? Oh, the procurement officer. Can you give me an idea on what's, you do a lot of procurement with Bob, or does Bob not have somebody on staff? that
Commissioner
works?
Visser, that's actually
Bob
not.
really likes me.
Yeah, that's not within, see the line right below where it says Development
Okay.
Services? That's, I believe, switching in Department
Staff
Administration.
services.
So that,
Engineer, yeah.
yeah, that last
Strike
purple,
that.
the purple one is
buying
the
a
last
lot
one
of
for
stuff
Development
these days.
Services.
It's below development
You got to
services.
procure that
It's admin.
that wood chipper for parks.
Good enough, we'll strike that one.
Any other questions? Okay, I'm ready to say I have the utmost confidence in Meg's ability to lead her team and know what she needs, and she's always run very lean, I think, as you can attest to, in working with her over the years. So
Yeah.
I would say yes to what she's proposed today.
With all 3?
With all
community
3
planners,
or with
2?
backing out one of them?
I think with all 3. That would leave you 2 up to the transportation one.
I would probably prefer to back out the 3rd, and if we wanted to revisit that in a year, I'd be open to that. But I'd rather see us get going on regional plan, adjust our expectations on traffic impact, et cetera, and maybe revisit that in a year. I'd prefer to do that.
That's my leaning also on this one.
So what, which planner is that one, Meg? Is that 8, 9, 9, 0, and 9, 1?
Is it the last one? Okay.
Thank you, Anthony.
Yeah, it's the last one then.
Behind the machine.
Okay, so moving forward, except for 091.
And did we have some questions about 086?
Survey, the special salary adjustment. Oh, yes. Moving on, Cassie, we have a question on 086 on the survey engineering technician position, and you can, yes, please, Meg, stay up there.
It's actually, I believe, a reclassification to an associate engineer, which we don't have that job title yet, but when we did look at it externally, we were recommending 60,000 for that as a wage.
So that's a big discrepancy between 60 and 84. Can you speak to that, either one of you?
Isn't it, I'm sorry, go ahead, Meg. I think we're going to say the same thing.
That's always good.
Yeah. Madam Commissioner, Commissioners, I think that it's supposed to be an engineer. It's not a sort of engineer tech. It's actually it's an engineer, a civil engineer that we're wanting to hire.
Oh, okay, it's not a tech.
Correct.
Well, and I have that it's going from a part-time to a full-time.
Oh, okay.
So it's an engineer, and it's a full-time position.
Going to a full-time position that it's
Okay.
currently part-time.
Someone to help Zach. I'm putting this all together. I'm
Yes.
remembering
Right,
all
Zach?
of this. Okay.
Probably the way they put it.
Okay, I'm good with that. And I just want to echo some comments here, you know, being new, trying to figure out what's what around here. Your department has done such a tremendous job of project managing projects, giving us timelines, deadlines, and executing on those and providing really complete and thoughtful reports. And I just am so appreciative of that. And I know you run really lean and you run a really great ship. So thank you.
Thank you. That means so much.
Come back next year for your transportation planner.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, appreciate it. Okay?
Okay. Next up, including procurement, administrative services. So you can see we have 2 new positions, and then some adjustments, number of reclassifications, part-time to full-time.
We want to question ourselves?
Yep, exactly.
Okay, so I'm reminded here that we're looking at someone who's specifically focused on training and development, number 1,
For the HR,
for HR.
that's correct.
Procurement, we have options. We can hire someone. If not, there's also the additional intern time, okay? Part-time to full-time clerk, and then the rest of the stuff that we've already discussed. Okay.
Hold on, looking at our own.
No, you're fine. I'm patient. No worries. Take your time.
Okay, any discussion on procurement? I think that was one that we talked about, whether we wanted a full-time position on that or to use an intern or a couple of interns. I know the 3 of us had talked about that briefly before. Any thoughts on that, Commissioner Fisher?
Well, I am certainly a proponent of using interns and externs. I believe Bob's done it in the past.
Yes.
Okay, so I'll defer to my other commissioners on this one. I'm not sure what your stance is on using interns, externs, and
Well, we have used them. I think it's a matter of, I don't know, Bob, would you like to come up here and speak to this? Would you remind us what the volume you're seeing is? I know you've seen increases in your volume.
Yes, so Madam Chair, Commissioner LaChiando, Commissioner Visser. So yeah, we're seeing an increase overall in our number of projects that we're seeing come through, about 105% increase in projects and about a 75% increase in spend year over year. So we're continuing to trend upward with all of those. And so the extra procurement officer would help to distribute the load of the overall projects.
So Bob, what is the reclassification for procurement? Is it officer, just officer to officer 2, officer 1 to 2?
Yes, Madam Chair, that's exactly it. So that is a job family, and it's procurement officer 1, comma 2. And so this is just a distinction of procurement officer 2.
Okay.
And I believe there's also a with a added benefit of having that particular person has also attained their professional certification.
Oh, great. Okay.
And what's your present status with using externs, interns right now?
Well, right now, we have a really good relationship with Boise State, and we've had our internship program for 9 years now. And so during the summer, or excuse me, during the spring and fall, we bring on an intern for 150 hours per semester. If we weren't able to maybe fund that procurement officer position, what we're requesting is to up the number of hours for that internship to 600 hours over the course of the year.
From 150,
From 300.
300.
Yep.
Madam Chair, Bob, so when you staff up and having just sat in a couple of these right now, so when you staff a procurement effort, who's the team that you need in place?
So right now, we have a procurement officer that manages that project. So that's one procurement officer. Along with that procurement officer, we have our buyer that also helps assist with notes through the pre-bid or the evaluation meeting. It also assists in putting together any other types of notes, meetings that might come up. So we may have 2 people per project. But that buyer is a very small role.
Remind me of the size of your team again?
We have 3 procurement officers and 1 buyer.
How, are you okay with it?
I'm okay with it.
Commissioner LaChiando?
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thanks.
Any thoughts on any of the other ones?
I think we green-lighted them. We're good.
Okay. I think you did. I'm just making sure. Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
Good to move on.
Okay, before we go to public defender, can we do my favorite thing? Go back to our
Weed abatement?
Yeah, sure.
county, well, yeah, weed abatement, obviously, but Adam's here. He knows I like some larvicide. Take us down to 3. Okay, take us down to 2.5. Well, that didn't do much. Okay.
So close. The next box over.
So how far away are we from green at this
They're
point?
not that close.
No. Okay.
Bill, can you drop it down to 700,000?
Yeah, exactly.
Which will get us nothing.
Yeah, which will get us a bathroom in a coroner's office. Okay.
Here, since you have a public defender coming up, they could use a restroom.
Let's get Tony's one restroom. That's what's coming up. Okay.
Okay, next up, Public Defender's Office.
Okay.
Got the list of requests. Again, this is lengthy, so you kind of rely on what you have on your notes. We got the new positions first, followed by the reclassifications and special salary adjustments.
Okay, hold on.
So before we get into this, I just, I'm looking to Cassie, I'm looking to Jan, I'm looking to Tony. I think it's really important that as we have attorneys, we're equitable across both offices. And my understanding is that we're more or less there. The closer we can get that on a go-forward basis, I think it's really important. I think it's, besides I don't know that we poach internally, but just the message that we send to potential applicants about how we value these positions. So I know we're really close, but in a go-forward basis, the more we can align these, I would be appreciative of that.
So my understanding is that 3 of these new positions, and I see 4 here, but 3 of these are directly related to the 3 new judges. Is that correct, Tony? Come
I
on
believe
up,
each of the
Tony.
attorneys are related to the new judges. And then you have the social worker on top of that.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Commissioners.
Good afternoon.
Yes, the 3 attorneys that I'm asking for, 1 attorney 1 and 2 attorneys 2 are to staff the new judges coming online in October. I do have a part-time attorney position that I'm asking be turned into a full-time position. That is because we've received information, and Jan maybe has more information about this at this point than I do, but there is some idea coming from Judge Moody that the new district court judge might take on a specialty court component to their job duties. And if that's the case, I need to staff for that. So that's why that part-time position would be helpful for us to be a full-time position. So
that's showing up in a new position?
yes. Well, it's currently a part-time position. We're asking that it be turned
That's
into
showing up somewhere else.
It's to reclass it, right?
Correct. It's not a new attorney position, it's a reclass.
Okay. Anthony, could you do the same thing that you did for prosecutor's office and go ahead and total up the reclasses and special salary adjustments?
Only my mother calls me Anthony.
Miss Anthony, yeah.
129,812.
129? Okay.
So-
Go ahead.
I'd like to speak to the social worker and just make sure that I'm clarifying everything in my mind. So in my understanding, we were able to bring this person on originally through the MacArthur grant. Is that correct?
Not the MacArthur grant.
Not the MacArthur grant.
Indigent Defense Grant.
Through the Indigent Defense Grant, okay.
And we have a reclassification of 044. It's an attorney 5 level, it looks like. Is that right? And we're looking at the proposed, it goes to 103, 103,000, 10%, and I think HR is recommending 116. Have you had a conversation with HR?
I have. I think we're all on a similar journey, the prosecutors in our office and HR, trying to manage this equity issue, not only internally, but as compared to statewide. Right? We've all had attorneys leave our office for the Attorney General's office, the federal system, et cetera. So we've worked with Cassie and Alex extensively to try and establish appropriate attorney levels and appropriate pay bands within those attorney levels. I have tried to be mindful of not doing it all at once. I have taken my attorneys and their skill, their experience, their years of service, their level of responsibility, and have tried to put them in the appropriate pay bands. Some of them are lead counsel qualified in death penalty cases. Some of them are about to be lead counsel qualified in death penalty cases. Those are kind of the upper echelon of skill and experience in our office. And Could they be paid at a higher rate than they are right now? For instance, the attorney that's helping in the death penalty case over in Cassia County, we've been working the last few years to get her salary up to a comparable level with others in her position. So trying to do it in an incremental way.
I think we're trying to help you in this case, so.
I am very appreciative of
Okay,
that.
so I think in this case, we would like to ask you to increase that to 116, or at least I would. I'm concerned that we have an equity issue.
Right, and looking at the other.
And given that this person is an attorney 5, would like to ask us to bump that up to 116.
Sold.
Okay.
Other than that, it looks like there's parity throughout, at least getting closer, so.
Certainly
yeah,
working
You're
on it.
working on it, I know,
think
so
we
this
had-
would help.
Question on the next page, however.
And then we have one more for you.
Could I ask some questions on that death penalty in the Cassia County case, please?
Sure.
Yeah, so Ada County is helping out Cassia County.
We
Their
are.
public defender, or do they have a contract attorney over there? What's their current status?
This particular case, the public defender in Cassia County had to recuse themselves.
Okay.
And so they brought in Keith Rourke to be lead counsel, and he needed co-counsel, and he reached out to me, and we were happy to provide that assistance. So at this point, Cassia County is paying for our attorney service at the rate of $125 an hour.
Okay, and what situations occur when the AG steps in and takes a capital case?
In my experience, that is pretty rare. I've not seen it, frankly, and so I don't really know the answer to that question. There are only, the AG would be the prosecuting agency on a case, and so from a defense standpoint, the defender always has to be qualified in capital cases if they're a public defender, and so the same rules would apply. It would be just simply a different prosecuting agency.
So they're limited to another county public defender. They can't take also a federal public defender, or can they?
That is correct, different jurisdictions.
That's what I thought, yeah, okay. Thank you.
One more question, and this may be a question for Cassie. We have an office administrator position that is coming in at proposed 88,170. Do we have other office administrator positions throughout the county that we can compare this one to that are similar?
Yes, we have 7 additional office administrators that work for Ada County.
Okay, and what's the average?
The average is 63,000.
I'm sorry?
The average is 63,000.
63,000, okay. So, Tony, can you address this discrepancy? Is this an office administrator, or is this someone that is doing something other than just office, or not just, but office administration?
Yeah, this individual in this particular case is, I'm working with Cassie, we haven't been able to get this done yet. My office administrator has essentially become my chief financial officer. And our budgeting typically at this point has gotten to the point where it's almost a year-round process. I think Jan and the sheriff have spoken to that. And so what used to be my office administrator, the person who would supervise my staff, et cetera, is now my chief financial officer. So that's what I call him, that's not the position. So we're trying to change that position to a financial position and then make my assistant office administrator the office administrator. Her level of responsibility and her duties are much greater than an assistant office administrator. And so go ahead.
Would you need to go back out then with a job application that is more aligned with the new duties of chief financial officer?
Yes, I have, the steps I've taken so far, I have provided HR and the prosecutor's office as well with a job description from the federal public defenders, for instance. Their office administrator takes on much more of a financial aspect to that particular position. And so their job description, because they were just advertising, and I was leery of losing some of my people, I found their job description, and it's exactly, well, not exactly, but it's very similar to what I want my position to be. So I've provided that information to HR, and I'll actively work towards making that a new position.
Okay, what's the title of the new position?
That's a fascinating question. I can
To be determined.
I can email it to you. It's I have the application just not on me, but it's I'll email you all the listing and the description, and it's more of an executive administrator position is what they call it, instead of office administrator, so.
I hear that. I think what we're struggling with, again, kind of if we're framing this, trying to be consistent, is this equity question, and given how it's currently titled, it's significantly outside of equity for the rest of the county. So, and as you know, we're all facing the fact that all of our salaries are now on the Statesman, and people have the ability to go and look and see what folks in other departments and offices are being paid, and it makes me nervous to have somebody out of alignment that significantly under the existing job title.
Well, if I may address that point, that person, my current office administrator, that I'd like to be more of an executive financial position, he is at this point essentially the same person as the similarly situated person in the prosecutor's office, and he makes significantly less than she does. So if we're comparing apples to apples, and she has a lot more years of experience than my person does, but they essentially perform the same function. And I don't mean to call her into question or
No,
her
that's fine.
salary at
That's what
all.
we're trying to do is compare,
I'm not
yeah.
saying anybody's salary is inappropriate, but in terms of my office administrator, he makes quite a bit less than the prosecutor's similar.
What's the title of the prosecutor's office?
She's here, so she should.
Financial Administration Division Manager. Got that right. What's the salary in that position?
If we're gonna talk about personnel.
I think we need to.
People, I would prefer if that wasn't done in an open forum.
I concur. I would like to put a hold on this one, just so we can have we may need to have a personnel executive session conversation there. Because I understand what you're trying to do, but I just want us to be mindful about that.
Understood.
Okay. So do you want to put a hold, or we want to, how do we want to hold this, Phil?
Let me see. I gotta catch up to you guys on the last change too. I can spell. All right, so I'm just gonna leave that one, put a note there. And then I think when we have, in terms of the increase that you did on the other position, I'll actually just work with Anthony at our next break to make the $13,000 difference, because there's a couple of numbers we have to change.
Okay.
So rather than hold us up right now, I'll get
Okay.
that cut.
Okay, that's great.
So before we go through the rest of them, which I don't know that we're going to go through all of them, but I just want to go back to this social worker. I was so appreciative during the presentation of your explanation and reasoning. And if I'm looking at the county holistically, now we're going to have this person in addition to somebody you already have. We have person over at the sheriff's office. I think we have to have a recognition that the county is stepping into. We don't have a department of social work, but because of the kinds of complexities of issues that we're seeing, our folks, we are being asked to and recognizing that we need to do that. So I think it bears an additional conversation for those departments and offices who are going to start having these types of positions, to talk about, are there collaborative opportunities internally? Is there learning and best practices? Do we bring together a cohort? I don't know. What does it mean for us as a county to kind of start dipping our toe into this? I'm very supportive of it. I think it's doing the right thing by our people, and I also think it helps us bend the curve in terms of recidivism, but it's just a new type of task that we are taking on.
Okay, we're ready to go. Thank you so much.
How would you like to proceed regarding we've addressed two positions, I believe, but the remainder of them?
Which two?
Well, I guess we put one on hold. Let me rephrase that. We've
Put
addressed
one on
one
hold.
and we put one on hold.
Yeah.
I am supportive of the other requests. I think we have to, we're trying to do the same thing here as we're doing in the prosecutor's office. Just, I think with an eye toward what we hope to get to moving forward, getting ourselves out of a position of doing these kind of what feels like one-off special salary adjustments and having a more holistic countywide plan. So I'm supportive of everything else that has been done,
I think one of the things that would,
except for the one we're putting on hold.
Yeah.
so maybe I asked for this before and I don't, maybe I got it, but I don't remember. I'm really interested in finding out what the all-in overall cost is to the county per judge. Because we're having support positions pop up in, the clerk's office and in public defenders and prosecuting attorney's office and possibly more. So who could put those numbers together for the board?
Yeah, so we have, in terms of, there's a couple of things with this where there's some nuances. In terms of we can capture, there's 17 new positions, right? And we can calculate what those new positions are and what the associated equipment is and give you that information. You could divide that by the 3 judges. The one caution is you have a district judge and 2 magistrate judges and 2 magistrate judges that may have different caseloads. And some of the decision-making, you heard that from Prosecutor Bennett's along the way. For example, the prosecutor's office and the public defender's office largely support the criminal caseloads that are related. So that's definitely on a district judge. But in terms of the magistrate assignment, there's still a looming question. Most likely there will still be some prosecutorial need regarding child protection on one of the magistrate judges, but not the entire magistrate caseload, right? So there's some variability and they aren't staffed the same, especially from the clerk's office and the TCA's office. So it's not necessarily a per judge thing, but we have the 17 new positions, I think. Anthony, do you have that information in terms of what that total cost is among those 17 positions?
1.4 million.
Okay, 1.4 million.
Okay, I would just like to compare that when the legislation was passed, what they had for their fiscal note, if any, and just make sure that information, as adequate as we can get it, is being shared back.
Sure. And I think it's worth noting in terms of the legislation that went through. Legislation only goes through for the district judge in terms of being authorized. Magistrate judges are funded differently at the legislature. And also the prior commission sent a letter of support for these 3 judges when they were requested, indicating that the intention to fund them.
Yeah, I think very supportive of
Sure.
judges. We know our caseloads are, over and above elsewhere in the state. I think as it wraps into the other conversations going on just this Monday about, I think a comment was made by one of the senators saying that she would pay to watch counties wrestle over funding, how much funding they'd have to give up regarding indigent fund. So recognizing that we're all under a 3%,
Sure.
we're under the 3% cap, they are not. And these things all get balanced together. So your point is well taken in terms
That's
of
for planning
they
purposes.
they should be aware of what we're facing holistically.
And by sheer coincidence, I had a call with the Supreme Court earlier today where they're trying, in terms of their presentation, trying to capture, I think following the audit that was done last year by the legislature, they're trying to capture, and they were asking questions, what are we spending on the AV improvements, courtroom costs, as well as personnel specifically to support the courts? That doesn't capture necessarily prosecutor and public defender costs, but what are the county's investments in the courts, I think fitting with the theme that you guys are referencing here.
So we can circle back with you and we can try to put that piece.
Well, I think the $1.4 million is a number you can
Pretty
rely
solid.
on. Yeah, that's not, yeah.
Okay, I think we're ready to move on.
Okay. So, Commissioner Laciano, you mentioned that is everyone else supportive of the other positions? Okay.
But Tony, if you become a Yankees fan, I'm gonna feel differently. So.
Next up is parks. You can see right there in the center. There's a special salary adjustment for a maintenance mechanic. as well as 2 recommended changes from HR regarding the director and a maintenance mechanic supervisor.
We already said yes to the.
Oh, we
waterways
said,
side.
okay. So we've already said yes to the other half where it was split between waterways and parks, so I encourage you to do both halves. Thank you, Kathleen and Anthony.
So you don't want a half day's work, okay.
Exactly. So are we okay with that? Okay. And then followed by that is the position for weed. I'm assuming this is within the allocation, following the general rules you've applied so far.
Right, the division coordinator.
Yep. And congratulations, other than the ones that we need to revisit, we have completed all of the personnel requests.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Wow, yeah, you're making progress.
Sort of.
Well, you know, it is still progress. Right, as you've demonstrated, there's easy ways to move these numbers.
Bill.
Uh,
Oh, never mind.
What?
Well, there's one that we didn't address in the fair, but we can go back and do that one
you wanna-
I'm gonna do that now.
in drug court.
Which one is the next?
Oh, yeah.
On that update.
Yeah, let's restart my computer right now and see how that goes for us.
All the way at the top, Bill.
Okay. Oh, I think you wanted, I don't know if you want to visit this now. One was the fair director position, if you want to still hold on that position.
We're looking for, maybe if we have an opportunity to have that personnel discussion regarding other areas in executive session, maybe we need to have that, or unless you have a number you're ready to give us.
I would just recommend that we not decrease the salary, but hold it steady at where it currently is. The
Okay.
request here is to decrease it. I would just recommend you deny it and leave it where it's at now until you make a
So
decision.
if we deny the increase, does the regular amount go back in? Is that what's happening here?
Exactly,
Okay.
the reduction doesn't occur.
Reduction of
Okay.
5%.
Yeah,
Okay,
it
and
doesn't
that's in,
happen if you deny it.
that needs to be
It's a
in
double
both.
negative.
That needs to be in both areas, it looks like.
Yes.
Okay,
Are we good with that, just
yes.
holding?
So we're looking at the annual, and the proposed is lower. So
So
we're,
say no.
So what, by saying no, you'll be keeping the annual.
Okay.
instead of lowering it.
Yep.
Yeah, we're gonna revisit this anyway, so I'm fine with it now.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, do you recall, Kathleen, why we held on this one? So there's one outstanding in drug court. It's the treatment center supervisor. You want to read?
I wonder if it was because of the name, the title of it, or just because it was a large increase?
I don't think we had an issue with this. It was within,
Yeah, I don't,
Yeah.
That might
Maybe we
just be a
missed
mistake.
it. We all
Yeah.
missed it.
If my fellow commissioners,
it's great, okay, right, we'll move forward then.
I would like to request that my fellow commissioners go back and reconsider the 2 additional deputies for the courthouse based on our statutory obligation. Just to give you another chance to say no, if you want to say no.
I'll stick with my no at this time.
well, I had the opportunity to chat with the sheriff yesterday. You know, first off, if I want to recognize that this is it sometimes feels to me a messy form of government in the sense that, as you can tell, we're trying to be really mindful of only talking to each other on the record and having these conversations when it's fully open and noticed. So I want to be cognizant that some of my comments yesterday may have come across as maybe dismissive of the work being done in the sheriff's office. So I just want to recognize that I don't feel that way at all. If anything, I really appreciate all that you do. I did have concerns about not feeling fully informed on my end about where this came from, what the need was. So if anything, this process, not just this, but taken as a whole, highlights for me why we are hiring a county administrator who can help keep us in track and online. And I think actually during next year's budget, hopefully it will go much faster. I have some questions still about this, and I guess I want to go back and understand, do we need both? Do we need both positions? Do we just need one? I'm still somewhat confused as to how this is going to work and dovetail with the marshal's office. I understand, I understand the code. I understand how it's written, but it's a big chunk. It's a big chunk of money to take on, and I'm just not fully understanding what we do there. Sheriff Bartlett, is this a time you'd like to weigh in?
Back up to see us again.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Commissioners.
Good afternoon.
First of all, as the recipient of somebody that sits in the audience and enjoys the coffee and water and snacks that are brought, I want to say thanks to Judy for providing all of those for all of her hard work throughout this process as well. And so, hey, yes, I'm happy to answer any questions. I think this is one of those discussions that has been going on for a lot of years, and which is why the Courthouse Security Committee was put together, and all of our elected officials and members that work in and around this building have come together and had conversations about, are we doing it the right way? Is there a better way to do it? And out of that conversation stemmed the conversation of we do have some potential security risks in this building. And we, as to not expose some of those risks, I probably won't talk about them today, but I'm always happy to discuss them in whatever setting that is that you need to hear that information. Out of that committee, the recommendation was brought to us through the commissioners, through the committee, to what would it take to put a couple additional sheriff's deputies in this building between the hours of 7 in the morning and 5 at night. And we went back with our financial team and put those numbers together, which we talked a little bit about yesterday. The question was brought to us, why is the overtime in there? And what does that look like, and how do we come up with that number? And I provided that information in an email earlier today. But court operates 7 to 5, and many evenings it's much longer than that, depending on which judge you're in front of. And so we have 40 hours plus 10 hours of overtime for us to fill those positions and be in the building at least for that length of time. And so that's where those numbers come from. We're providing that to you as an additional layer of security in this building. There are several statutes that are out there that clearly show that the sheriff's office and the county commissioners are ultimately responsible for the security and ultimately the risks that happen in and out of this building. And so I guess that's what we're providing to you through those numbers of an additional layer of security Monday through Friday, 7 to 5.
Any other questions?
I don't know if it's a question or more of a comment. So again, this form of government, I'm not on the security or the courthouse security committee, so I haven't heard all of those conversations. It's hard to translate them sometimes. I struggle with having marshals, sheriff's deputies, and contracted security. We have a responsibility to provide security to the courts. the level of security that we have to provide to everybody else is not at the same level. And as I mentioned yesterday, I mean, you don't have to go through any scanner or anything to go to the State House. You don't have to go through anything to go to Boise City Hall. And so I just wonder, do we have a heightened sense of responsibility or security here than other entities have, or is it the same? Talk to me about.
Well, I think the closest, Madam Chair, I don't want to interrupt
ahead.
if you, Commissioner Lachiondo, I think the closest comparison that you can have is the federal courthouse that sits here right in Boise. And I would say that they have even a more enhanced sense of security and provide that not only to their judges, but just to get in the building. And so we're very much on par with courthouses here in Ada County. Can you go around the state? Can you go to other states and see variances in that level of security? Absolutely. And so I think it comes back to why the security and the campus committee exists, is to bring everybody that comes and goes in and out of this building that has a stake in the game and listen to those recommendations. And again, I think it's no different than the budget. At the end of the day, we have to weigh all of those factors, and you have to decide what level of security you're willing to live with. And on the flip side of that, I think it's what level of risk you're willing to live with as well.
Okay, I'd just like to, again, reiterate my concerns is that the way the language reads now, the county sheriff, your primary statutory obligation is to provide court attendance, is to provide presence here in this building, and it's ultimately the county commissioners who ultimately bear the liability of not doing so. So if we want to have this language changed, I think that's fine. We can revisit that. But in the interim, this is what our obligation is as it stands today.
Correct. However, the marshal's office is currently providing security for the courts. And so I'm struggling with these layers, and it has nothing to do with who's doing a good job or not.
Right,
You know,
right.
it's not that. It's more like sort of efficiency and working together as a team. And, you know, I would be willing to put these back in with a condition of kicking off conversations about who is going to be providing full courthouse security on an ongoing basis. Because I just really don't like, from a business perspective, from running an operation, having 3 different levels of organizations trying to do like responsibilities.
And Madam Chair, Commissioner Lachiondo, I agree wholeheartedly with you that we need to have a global discussion. I think much of this comes down to our state statute. It also comes down to what the state recognizes as peace officer powers and the ability to effect an arrest and take somebody into custody and provide those services. And so, you know, just a really quick scenario would be similar to going to the airport, right? You go through various levels of security. You'll go through TSA. In the Boise airport, you'll have the Boise Police Department that provide the lawful orders and arrests within that compound. And so it is typical to have several layers of security, but I would agree with you that it's a good idea to have it clearly defined as to where your authority starts and where it ends. And we're willing to be at the table for that. We're here to provide service to you as your sheriff's office.
And Judge Moody and their team as well is very open to figuring this out and working together and building a better system collaboratively. So
And I think it's important to recognize our security committee that has been working for several years. And the people from your offices and all of our elected offices are at the table. Everybody that works in this building sits and has a voice at that table to come up with the right solution. And so the bones are there.
Right. I just want, so I'm willing to put these back in. So you have my second there. But I think if we kick this off, we're gonna have to work hard to, and probably revisit, I'm gonna say I'm gonna wanna revisit these positions next year if we don't get further along in that conversation. And I would hate to, I don't know if these are new hires or we're shifting or what does this look like, but I would be asking about this again next year and would want to see us much further along in that discussion.
And I'm the liaison for that committee and also working with Judge Moody on this. And you're more than welcome to attend those meetings. We'll have to, again, have Judy come and someone record them because we can't have conversations with two of us without doing that. So happy to make sure that you're included on any of these meetings that are occurring, including the ones with not only the committee, but the ones that we're working with Dana Ho and the sheriff and Judge Moody and myself to kick this off on what it would look like. How do we make it more efficient, more effective? I don't think anyone wants additional layers that don't need to be there.
Commissioner Visser, do you have any other thoughts?
Well, I'm taking a look at the status of Attorney General opinions, and I'm seeing that none of them are mandatory legal authority, and none of them carry significant persuasive weight. That's from a Idaho Supreme Court decision issued in 1999. So,
Yes or no?
no, I'm still no.
Okay, he's still no. Okay. Thank you, Sheriff. Appreciate it.
For sure.
Moving along.
Okay. I'll just ask because it just occurred, any others that you wanted to revisit, or are you ready to move to?
Were there any others to revisit from yesterday?
Don't recall.
Okay, you're good? You're good? Okay.
I'm just gonna go, we're gonna circle back here and then just two other things that you had asked to revisit. We can leave them as is because the default is no, just so you know, on the CIP, but we didn't register anything for the courthouse security camera upgrade and the jail CCU and dorm side visiting changes. I don't know if you want to revisit those or just leave them as is for the time being. But I present them just because we didn't actually document a decision on those two.
You look like you're going to say something. Yeah?
Couple deputies would help us pay for some CCU is what I'm thinking, but we've already made that decision. So, yeah, I'm probably ready to leave these as is.
Did you want to vote yea or nay on courthouse security camera upgrade?
No, at this time.
Don't want to vote or no?
I'm saying no.
Oh, you're saying no, okay. Commissioner Visser?
Yeah, no.
No, so no on courthouse security upgrades?
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, I thought we said yes on this one. The JLCCU? No, okay, we did not,
I think we discussed it quite a bit.
yeah. Commissioner Visser, you want to weigh in on this one? Back at the.
This is
capital
where you asked the
improvements.
sheriff about whether it could be split or not. So we did discuss it at length. We just never
Could
made a
be split?
decision.
Yeah,
The recommendation was because it's the same space, that it would be extremely inefficient to split it.
expensive, yeah.
Like, you might, since you're in there, you might as well complete it because you're tearing down some of the same walls.
I'm going to say no for now, because I think we're revisiting a lot of the jail space and how we're going to handle that, looking at that from a bigger picture. So I'm just going to put this on hold for now,
Agreed.
for me.
Yeah, and
Okay.
no for me also.
Okay?
May come back, but no for now.
Are there any other than the one that we put on hold? Okay.
Family homelessness, that's on hold.
Okay, yeah, actually, that's good.
left.
Do you, yeah, so we've gone, I guess what we're trying to clarify, we've gone through everything,
Okay.
right?
Have?
So, yeah, we've gone through everything. You've been through the entire budget at least once.
Okay.
Right.
On the family homelessness, we're going to have a meeting tomorrow so we can gather more information so we can actually deliberate intelligently, hopefully. Feeling like we don't have quite enough information. So we'll tackle that one tomorrow,
Okay,
first thing. And
so, a few different things here. We have some, I think there's information, I don't know if I quite follow. I know Mitra has put together some information if you want to discuss more, because we're talking about that lump sum for the master's facility plan. Mitra's prepared to provide some information regarding the master facility plan. Also, I'll need a minute to pull it up, but we have some information on just what with the increase, the 3% and the new construction roll, what those increases mean to taxpayers, right? So on the median homes, we have that
is that
information.
an medium home?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'll walk you through that stuff. I think it might work well. I mean, it could be either way, but we could have Mitra come up and present that information. And then before we go on, after we do those things, the next steps are now we've got, if it felt long or hard, now we're to the really hard part. We have to determine how to balance this, right? You can see we're out of balance currently. I'm going to be persistent in ensuring that we do get in balance. And so that's kind of our next phase. So I think where we are now, if we want to bring Mitra up, I think this is probably a good time.
Take a little break.
Take a break?
Sure.
We need to take a break at 3.
Yeah.
Oh,
So if you
we're
could
taking a
wait.
break at 3 today?
Yes.
Yes, this is my request.
No, it's Phil's request.
Oh, Phil's
today.
request, okay,
Yeah,
sorry.
so from 3 to 3:15.
Okay,
we'll be
never
taking a
mind.
break.
Let's have Mitra
Okay,
come up then.
sorry
We'll-
for the inconvenience.
Okay, no worries. I remembered.
Work, maybe? Maybe
Nice
not.
picture.
There you go. Oh, thank you.
Good afternoon, Mitra.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the board. First of all, thank you for considering the implementation of Master Facilities Plan. This was my very first independent project with Ada County, and I got to know all these amazing people behind me through this process. But also because it's such an important tool for Ada County in ensuring effective governance and in making sure that we are providing cost-effective services to our residents. So thank you for considering this piece. So as you are aware, in fiscal year 17 and 18, we worked with every leader of the county. That means every official as well as every department head. And we identified every single operation of Ada County across all 32 locations and 1.2 million square feet of building plans. It was quite an undertaking, but what we learned in that process is we had some deficiencies in existing buildings, and we definitely needed new facilities to accommodate the growth that we are experiencing in 2040. So we had identified the total need of Ada County per 1,000 population going forward. And what we did is we broke down each of those needs into smaller implementable projects so that we can undertake them in the implementation phase and go through each one of them at a time as time and resources are available to us. And so what is available to us as a result of the Master Facilities Plan is our facilities portfolio is more than $300 million. And Madam Chair, I fully recognize that this is a tall order. And again, I want to compliment this board for taking it at its pace and moving forward with the implementation. So these are our top priorities.
Madam Chair, Mitra, before you get started, could you go back? In struggling to try and piece all these different pieces together, last year the prior board authorized funding to pay for spaces, parking spaces in a private development. Where does that sit on here?
So when we were wrapping up the master facilities plan, we were not directly involved in those discussions, Development Services Department. But we did learn that we had a building that we were entering into renegotiation for, and which would allow us 250 spaces that would allow us to move all the people that are parking in the triangle parking lot into that building so that we would be able to use the triangle parking lot for other uses that were anticipated in master facilities plan. But as far as we are concerned, we are not very familiar with that process and its outcome, but we were familiar with the fact that 250 spaces would be available somewhere.
But just for clarification, it was never identified in the master's facility plan.
No, that was
Nor
not
prioritized,
identified in the master facilities plan. There was a construction fund set up that got used for.
It was set aside, though, for parking.
Yes,
Yeah, for some time.
I believe.
Okay, thank you.
So these are the top 3 priorities. When the leadership team of the master facilities plan looked at every project that was needed in the next few years, they prioritized those based on what they believe was urgency and need of the county. And the first one was the Pod E. The second one was for the public safety complex. The second one was the courthouse complex, admin building, and the parking garage. And these 450 parking spaces are inclusive of the 250 that would be not needed possibly. And the coroner's new office, which will cost us around $19 million. So these were the 3 top priorities, and there are plenty of newspaper articles about the need of.
There's only 2 coming up on your slide. There you go.
Oh, okay. Oh, so, okay. I'm looking at the wrong screen, sorry. My bad.
Now there you go. Thank you.
So in today's presentation, I'm asked to speak about 2 of these 3 priorities. The public safety building, Pod E, and the coroner's new office, and what would be the design cost for these 2 buildings. Before I start with any details on these, I want to mention that these 2 are very specialized uses. It's not like a standard office building. In other words, you'll need to hire an architectural firm that specializes in these buildings, or a design firm that would be specialized in this, because most people do not realize how complex the coroner's operation is, and most of the architects do not have a clue about how you add a jail pod to an existing operating jail with 1,000+ inmate population. So this is going to be a tall order in terms of design work. And so before I jump into the actual design discussion, cost discussion, I would like to mention that for you. So the first one is a relatively simpler of the 2. It's the coroner's new office, which we have recommended that we will need to acquire a 2 to 5 acre site with, we'll need to build a building on that, which is custom built for the coroner in 25,000 to 35,000 square feet space. In March of 2019, you have established a construction fund for this, which is awesome because this is a very old building constructed in 1966 for standard warehouse, not really designed for a coroner where they are right now. So this was very much needed facility, and you'll be deliberating on this in the next few days on that request for $1.25 million, which would allow us to do some programming and purchasing a site for this project. But then what else is needed? So I'm not going to geek out on these numbers. These are available publicly in the appendix of the master facilities plan. But what is important is when you see in the table is the program level cost, and what it entails is these 4 factors. If site acquisition is involved, it builds that into it. Of course, the construction cost itself of the building, but then there are a bunch of soft costs, which involves the design cost, which runs around 10 to 15% depending upon the complexity of the project. And then you have the site improvements and surveys and conditional use permit approval, design review, anything else that makes up around 25% of the total construction, of the total project cost. So the first 3 bullet points that are part of the program level cost are really what makes the project cost. And then we have done the 5% price escalation, which is, again, in still $2018. So the program level cost for Coroner's new office in fiscal year $18 is around $19 million. Of that, around $13 million is attributable to the direct construction cost. Soft project of that cost is around $4.5 million, which is around 25%. And the design cost, which is, I think, is of importance to you today, is the 1.760. So that's your design cost for Coroner, which is assumed in the master facilities plan cost. Also, the construction price escalation is added to that. So if you're clear on that, I'll jump on to the public safety building. So public safety building has a series of improvements that are envisioned in the future, but the first one that is anticipated is construction of Pod E. And when we add this new pod, it will trigger some code deficiencies that are existing in this building in CCU unit. Because this building again was built in the past and the building codes constantly change. And as soon as we enter into any use permit discussion with the city, we will be asked to make those improvements in the CCU to make sure that the safety of inmates is ensured. So we have lumped those two together in the very first priority for this complex. And again, I'm not going to bore you with the construction cost detail of how we derived those, but what is important in this particular piece is there is no real site acquisition involved for Pod E construction because it's on existing sheriff's site.
However, Madam Chair, there's some, I don't know if disagreement is the right word, but discussion about existing parking lot versus additional property, correct?
Correct. And additional property is definitely recommended in the master facilities plan. It is the most optimal layout for the public safety complex when it's completed. So, when we did the review of various scenarios that we had looked at for sheriffs, including some that involved, acquisition of land on the southern border of the site, we felt that this was the most optimal in terms of operational efficiency as well as movement of traffic and other things. So yes, that piece is absolutely critical.
So it's not an either or, it's a both and.
Ask me that again.
So it's not either Pod E or acquire additional property, it's Pod E plus acquire additional property.
Yes. And that would be used in the future, the additional property, but as you know, the market is so hot in this region. If you don't acquire it, you're really going to miss out on the most optimal layout of the public safety complex. So in this one, there are 3 major costs associated. The program level cost is around $22 million. And the soft project cost would be somewhere around $5 million. Madam Chair, this is the one where I think for somebody who has worked in architecture field for a while, I can tell you that we should, instead of going with 10%, we should go with 15% design cost. Because of all the complexities, and there are a lot of operational aspects that needs to be taken into account when we are designing a new pod and how it connects to the existing building and how, in the meantime, you will manage the inmate population without disrupting, the safety of the Ada County residents. So, and then the construction price escalation of $1.5 million. So I must apologize. The total request for fiscal year 20 is not the amount that you see on the screen. I was trying to pull these slides very quickly. So if you were to put the 15%, let me go to my slide for that. Anybody that can count, can see that the $4.5 million total request in fiscal year 20 is not what, really.
Can
So
you
if
get the correct numbers? Can someone add those up?
yeah, so it's 5,874,300 something.
5.8. so
Yeah,
there's-
5.8, yeah.
5.8, okay.
And if you were to go with 10% design cost for PODI and CCU, which I would not recommend, it's 4.8 million. And then if you throw in the second driver's license location, that's another $500,000. So that's that. And Madam Chair, you asked me to use this. Your inaction in this.
The cost of doing nothing.
Of
to
not
the
doing
effort of
anything
taxpayers.
is costing Ada County residents around $5 million every year we don't act on master facilities plan.
About 5 million
Yeah.
for not acting on
Just
the whole
for
plan.
the first three priority, top three priorities.
Just for the first three, right.
Yeah. So, we are, by not acting, really impacting the county residents and their challenges quite a bit, financial challenges. So I would like to request that you consider some implementation of the master facilities plan, and with that, I'm available for any questions.
Thank you, Mitra. Thank you very much. Well, I think I've expressed my concerns and also my desire to marry a long-term financial comprehensive plan with the master's facility plan over the course of approximately 10 years. Would like to have us talk in those terms versus one-off projects. So when I approach this, I'm looking at, how do we fund, whether it's lease or debt service in the long run, to make it affordable for county taxpayers and keep up with our statutory obligations, public safety, health concerns and issues, as well as we haven't even talked about deferred maintenance on here and the cost of the deferred maintenance that we're going to be looking at as well. So, I'd like to look at how do we fund this and what's the best way of funding this. And I think we've talked about certificates of participation, bonding. I don't know if this is the right time to talk about financial tools. If there's someone here that wants to talk about potential financial tools, or if we just want to deliberate or discuss those amongst ourselves, commissioners?
I mean, who's been following along have watched, I'm really glad we put that lump sum at the front because I think it signals our intention to be serious about this, although it obviously affects the math significantly. And even if we were to, cut 25% of the positions that we just put in, I don't know that we'd get there. So I think what we're really struggling with is cost to taxpayers now versus cost to future taxpayers, and this is always what happens. What's different in running a business and what's being an elected official is that what we decide to do will have bearing on both policy as well as politics. And I share Commissioner Kenyon's thinking that while this is a hard chunk, it's a difficult chunk to bite off, and I don't appreciate sort of having to walk into this, but it's something that needs to be done, or future taxpayers are going to pay for those escalated costs. So I'm of that mindset, as much as it pains me to have that conversation.
I also just want to reiterate that the status of our current jail situation, we're in dire straits over there. We're over capacity. We didn't pass inspection again. It's not, to me, an and/or. It's just, how do we do it? What's the best way to do it? And same with the coroner's office. We're to the point where Diana won't even go to the facility to. But I have walked through that, and I just feel for the folks over there and for families, and it's our obligation and duty to make sure that these facilities are up to the capacity and health standards and safety standards that we owe to our taxpayers. So I am looking at wanting to know if we had to dip into Foregone, and we looked at that to cover this $5 million placeholder, what that would actually cost an average taxpayer for a year. And I think that we might have some numbers that we can talk through, because I am really cognizant of values going up and growth challenges that we're facing. We're going to continue to face growth and capacity challenges, so I think if we can figure out a way to get this done this year that is as less painful as possible, we should look at that. So Phil, did you, I know that...
Give me just a moment here, I'll pull something up real quick.
That'd be great, thank you.
May have Kathleen and Anthony help kind of just walk through the numbers that we pulled together. You want to help me walk through these, Kathleen? In terms of what you're seeing here, so that, well, I'll at least start off with the median home value right now, and Assessor McQuaid can easily correct us if we're wrong on this, is $340,000. So we have two comparisons that are up on the screen just to kind of give you some information. One is at $340,000 less the $100,000 in the homeowner's exemption, right? And then the other is the $199,000 to give you a lesser amount for those homes that are less, where the homeowner's exemption is only half the value of the home, right? Because there's going to be some variance on the tax impact. But generally speaking, that first column worth of information is kind of what you can rely on. The estimate, so if you look at those first two lines, and this is where Kathleen may need to correct me, the FY18 is showing what the actual tax impact was on a home of this value, located in Boise. And then that $78 is the estimated increase in the taxes based on what we've presented so far. And I think that is where it includes the 3% and the new construction. So that's based on what we've already plugged in, that's what the increase is going to be. Below that, what you'll see is, this goes to the question you just asked, Commissioner Kenyon. Basically, for every $1 million that you were to increase taxes, so the use of foregone is $4.36. So for every $1 million, so if you increase it by $5 million, you're going to be at $21.
$21.
Yeah, $21 in terms of the impact for that, on top of what you're already
This is
asking
just
for.
Ada County, this is not other taxing districts.
Correct.
So 78 is what we're looking at. The way
Currently.
we currently sat with the 3 in the new construction.
Correct.
Okay. We're looking at 100. Okay. Okay. All right, where do we go from here?
Okay.
Okay.
Clear as mud.
There's mud. So that would be about, so $100 is what we're looking at overall if we added those two together for the year.
Yep, that's, yeah.
So about $8.33 a month. Give or take. Is that right? Yeah. Okay. So what would you like to see us tackle?
Well, I'd like to see us balance the budget. That's been my goal since the get-go, and that's not going to change. Right now, we're at a point where we can start to revisit anything. I know you just had the presentation from Mitra. If you want to look at the lump sum, so you're effective. You always have basically two choices in this process. Yeah. You either increase revenue or you decrease expenses. And as we mentioned at the outset, we need to, in terms of the amount of fund balance that's acceptable to use based on the money we have currently in our fund balance, we need to get in that green area to be able to anywhere.
Greenish yellow.
How about green?
So the color
The more you can go into green, the better, right? That's in terms of savings, but it's tolerable to use up to. So if you get into that first green area, which is $7.775 million.
So why is it showing 12.24?
Because you have $5 million worth of, or really because you have more expenses. Let me rephrase that. It's not the $5 million. It's any of the items that are, it's actually not $5 million off either. It's 4-point-something million is what the difference is right now.
Can you show it going down to 3?
think the minimum that we could go would be 2.5 to be able to
You want me to
fund
plug that
any-
in real quick?
to fund anything. That would be the absolute minimum. Otherwise, we're back to Tony's toilet.
It's
about all
worth
that's
noting
gonna
that
be done.
distinction. This isn't the only place you can adjust from. It just
Yeah.
is probably the least painful at the moment to adjust based on.
Okay.
And I think it's, no, never mind. Sorry.
So can we talk about foregone taxes now? I know we can't deliberate on those because we.
Oh, yeah, no,
have a
you do, in
public
this
hearing.
process, you do need,
Yeah,
yes, this
so-
is the appropriate process. You should talk about them. What will happen is we will hold a separate public hearing before we finalize the budget to allow public feedback, but you can openly discuss them here, yes.
So 2.5 is absolutely the minimum to be able to service anything, whether it's a lease or anything on the facilities. So if we go below that, we might as well just take 0 there. So I'd be interested to see how much in foregone we would need to bring us into the green at this point.
I think it's gonna be real close to 2 million.
$7,127.
But who's counting?
Yes, exactly.
That
Who
guy.
are you?
That
Please.
guy's counting.
Who are you?
I don't even know what number to put now after you just said that.
21 is great. 210000.
Okay. Did I get that right, or I had, yeah, okay. Yeah, there you go, you're just, yeah, okay.
Okay. Commissioner Visser, you've been kind of quiet over there.
Well, I think you have an idea where I'm at. I'm flat out against using foregone taxes, particularly in the climate that we've given with the rising property values and complaints coming in on a regular basis over the last few years that property taxes keep rising and rising and rising. Also, foregone taxes, if you look at it straightforward,
I think we need to be careful not to be deliberative.
Make sure you guys are not making any sort of decisions.
Yeah, that would have to be in public
separately
hearing.
noticed.
okay.
Talk about whatever you want to do with numbers or get information from.
So as a clarification, none of the decisions that are made in this process are the final decisions. There are separate meetings that will be held in terms of the budget.
Completely agree, but I think if you're going to start talking about whether or not you have inclination to take more.
Okay.
So what about the portrayal of taking so much as we see in here?
That's fine. You guys can play with any of your numbers.
Okay.
So you could make a comment like, I would like to see foregone go down to 0.
Yeah, that's what I'll be at, is
That's
foregone.
probably about all we're,
Foregone
sounds
at
like
0.
we can discuss at this point.
So if that's the case, I hear that without commenting much more. I know you share a desire to get at these big ticket issues. How would you propose we go about that?
Talking to me?
Yes.
Okay. Well, for one, if we look at the figures and being on the transformation board, I don't believe we have to acquire the Dairyville property. I don't think the option or our options were fully explored to the extent where we could follow the best practices and make the most economical decision. The one being that we have that parking lot space and we can build on that space. Part of the parking lot space does have a fuel line going under it, but you only cannot boil directly over it. It actually goes through our subdivision, and you can see where it's at. As expensive as that land is, I don't see it as a wise business decision to pay top dollar for something like that. And basically, it's landlocked. We have frontage with it, and Dairygold has frontage with it, but if a third party buys it, they have no frontage with it.
So I hear that. I guess what I'm referring back to Mitra's presentation, and my numbers show that not even getting to the point of having to make ongoing payments for, be it through bond or lease payment, we're looking at 3.1 million just in design cost and 1.7 million for the public safety building and 1.7 million for the coroner. That's not land acquisition at all. That's just designing the new buildings. So that's 5.8 million that is, we have to find somewhere. That is not gonna come from that honey we found in that that house that was tax
Well, it's
deeded to us.
It's gonna be like how we've done it in the prior 2 years. We just have to go through this deliberation again and say, okay, to get to this figure, we've got to take out this, we've got to take out that. And that's how we've done it.
Okay, anything strikes you that you're wanting to take out?
I'll have to look through it again, but that's how we did it in the past. Some of it, we even did line item by line item, and Chris Ritz would go up and just go right down the list, and we say, okay, we aren't gonna do this one after all. And we'd watch that figure diminish so we could get to the green ball status.
I'm mindful, Phil, that it's 3:00.
I'm aware.
Okay.
I'm ready to recess
But
whenever you
yeah,
are.
let's take a break, and this will give us some time to process this and come back and come up with some ideas.
Okay.
Okay, we're in
You
recess.
guys know where we are. All right. Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks for that. I wasn't paying attention. Back on the record. Welcome back, everyone. And
Thank you, Madam Chair, for accommodating my schedule.
You're welcome.
More than welcome. Thank you for accommodating us. All right, you want to go ahead and ask your next question, and we'll see if we can answer it.
I don't know if I have a specific next question. I think where we left off there was some discussion. We need to, as you can see, the numbers that we have inserted right now, we are balanced. What this would trigger is next steps, as was presented. In order for us to consider any taking of foregone taxes, there does need to be a separate public hearing for you to deliberate on that, as well as for the public to provide input. And so if as it sits at the moment, so I think one thing, there was a question I got in the interim that I just want to clarify because of how we built the Excel tool that we're using here. At the moment, the supplemental, we have a hold on the supplemental for the Family Homelessness Public-Private Partnership. Right now, that number is being taken into consideration in the total numbers, right? So that's, by default, we have that built in, just like we did with all the supplementals. Similarly, we have a hold on that position in the Public Defender's Office. I'm not going to chase down to find it, but where you had that delta, that dollar amount is being taken into consideration right now just by default. These are things you haven't opined on, but by default, they're built into those numbers.
Are there any other besides those two?
I can't, there's no others besides those two.
There's the community
Support
support
coordinator.
coordinator, but that's in concert with the family homelessness.
Oh, okay.
And
So
that's
there's an
50?
additional $50,000 for
Okay, so that's 800 then, for those two items
for that
total.
tied together, and
That are in
then
there.
yeah, correct,
Okay,
correct.
great, thank you. So, Mitra, can you remind us, because I have a million notes up here, to get us through, I think it was 5.8 something that you said, to get us through design, could you just, again, walk us through that?
Right, so if you total up the 1.76 for the coroner's design cost and 3.1, which is 15% design cost for Pod E and CCU, and the property purchase of 1 million, that's 5.8.
5.8.
5.8 something,
Yeah, 874,300.
874, okay, so,
Not include the second driver's license location.
So
it does
I
not,
have-
okay.
I have a question about process. Say we were to plug in the full amount needed for these design costs, and that is whatever, 5.874. If we hold a hearing on foregone, are we held to that? Is it an either or, this full amount, or can we back it down? What does that look like?
Okay, that's a good question, and I may even have my own questions to work out on the procedural process. But I think here, let's say we said, all right, we want to consider $5.8 million. We could tentatively put that in place so that you could hold a public hearing. If then at that hearing you chose to do that, we would move forward with that as the means to balance. If at that hearing you decided, let's say with the numbers we have here, no, the most comfortable you feel is $2.1 million or nothing, whatever variance, we can adjust it. I think in terms of the process, what we need to know to be able to move forward with that is that what is being in this, whatever the, so there's that additional revenue that you're considering with the use of foregone. We need, both for the foregone hearing, it needs to be for a specific purpose. We need to be able to tie it to its commensurate expenses so that, I think to the heart of your question, if you chose to take a partial amount, like change it in some way, we would know what to then change the expenses. Because we, at the end, we have to have as a balanced budget. So as long as the revenue being discussed in that hearing has a commensurate expense and we know what that is as we leave here, we're good to move forward. It's just so we can have that offsetting amount, because we will have to make that adjustment and be able to know when you make a decision at that hearing what to do with that information afterwards. We can't have it be ambiguous in terms of what it is to be able to leave this point from here.
Okay, great. I would say before we jump into recommending a hearing on taking any foregone, I would like to just take time and go back through the CIP and the extraordinary, and let's just revisit those and see if there's anything there that we can cut and push off. If not, then we might be looking at a hearing.
Okay.
I'd like to make that effort.
That sounds great, and that's, I think, as Commissioner Visser, in the past, we've revisited some of the decisions prior made, and it's been a little while since we looked at them, so I think that it's a good place to start. So up on the screen are the capital improvement program requests. You can see the decisions that are recorded on the right-hand side, so in terms of which ones are yes and no. So those top red ones, you remove the two regarding the master facility plan discussion.
I'm assuming the public safety or security building, the jail grounding and unbalanced load would need to occur regardless of any additions for capacity. Is that correct?
I'm going to defer to operations on that one.
Or
Or do
Steve,
you know, Sheriff?
Sheriff Bartlett can answer that.
It's hard to hear back here, but
Would you, so I'm looking at the grounding, I'm asking on the grounding and the unbalanced load that OPS is requesting.
We can follow up with Scott to get
Would
some more
that still
information.
need to occur if we were to? Okay. I just want to make sure all this is.
Sorry, can you repeat the question again?
I'm just looking at the jail grounding and the unbalanced load on this 200,000. It looks like that's continuing, but I just wanted to make sure that if we're doing jail expansion, we're acquiring property or whatnot, that plan, what we're doing here, that would not be impacted, or if it would be impacted, and we could look at holding off on this to look at the bigger picture and then see if we need to do something that's more holistic for the property.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, those are two separate projects. So the jail grounding and bonding would go on regardless.
Okay.
And this is year 2 of
3 years.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay.
Juvenile system security upgrade. Pretty mandatory. All right, let's go down to the non-urgent. We have the Barber Park pathway is the only thing left in there, right?
Yep.
And that's coming from fund balance, but it's still under the 3%, so.
Correct.
Okay. Scott's not here to defend himself. Commissioner Visser?
Well, I think we've been pretty lean on this. We've taken a close look at it. It's, in my opinion, it's tough to take anything else out. And then when you look at, like the Barber Park one, I don't know if that's part of their self-funded part where that's done, or how is it?
This is where Scott Coburn can indicate they will use fund balance from parks to fund this. I mean, it is part of 3% cap, but they're
But
going to
it's
use.
still part of the 3%, so it
They're
moves the
interrelated.
ball for us on the top, even though it's coming out of that
It's
specific
an
fund.
anomaly because it is.
Well, so is everything in indigent services, for example. It's, it's all part of the 3%, but it's in its own fund.
True.
Well, yeah, except the anomaly is with a self-funded fund, and they have that in there.
Parks is not self-funded, so
Okay.
I want to make that clarification.
But it's in their separate fund balance.
But they have their own fund, and they have their own fund balance.
So
I
one
get, this
way
is
or
where
the
it gets
other,
the
it's-
nuances of our fund accounting.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But you're not willing to cut anything here, that's what you're saying.
not at this point. no.
Okay. Anything that you'd like to revisit that you think, you just said you thought
Would
we
you
were
want me to go to
pretty
the
lean?
extraordinary
Let's go to
operating
the
expenses?
extraordinary, yeah, and see if there's anything there. I think we still need to get people paid.
And everyone here appreciates that.
Keep the masses quiet.
The radio replacement,
I think they're out of
that's mandatory.
equated or something. They can't
Yeah.
support them anymore.
Right, exactly. So nothing there. Phil, how important are your electronic poll books to you?
They remain the same importance to me. They're my highest priority, but at the same time, I respect the situation that you're in. I don't think it's my role here to keep selling it to you,
That's to,
although I'm very willing.
that would be to supply them for everyone.
We have 150 polling locations, so this would
And
be
it's
for all
kind of
them.
an all or nothing. There's not like you could do a smaller amount and see how it works and sort of a beta run on it and make sure that you work the kinks out and it's as great as you think it is, and then purchase the rest?
I know in our conversations with IT, the preference is that we do it all at once so that we're all operating on the same hardware and tools at the same time, because there's different, we've done pilot tests with laptops.
Yeah.
And one of the frustrating things, that doesn't mean it can't be split up and do it partially. I don't want to suggest that it can't, because I'm sure where there's a will, there's a way.
Any comments on that?
No, I think Phil made a good presentation for it earlier. I appreciate his willingness to deal with it. I think I would hold off at this point and have to revisit it if we can't find things otherwhere.
I agree. Especially coming into the next year's
Big election.
big elections, I think it's gonna help you in terms of staffing and what you need to pay on the other end. So, I guess I do have a question in terms of how frequently, once we bring a technology like this on board, how frequently we're gonna be looking at maintenance, upkeep, and changing them out.
That's a great question. There will
that's a
be
good question.
some maintenance. I think there's one potential with the software maintenance that we have where the Secretary of State's office may be footing a portion of the bill because of the state contract they did. They included electronic poll work software with their most recent contract for our statewide system. The question, though, I think at the heart of your concern in terms of how frequent we have to upgrade, I don't really have a good answer for you at this time. I know there will be. This is relatively new technology to the industry over the past, so I don't think any jurisdiction's gone through a replacement cycle yet in terms of the technology being introduced at the polls. So I don't have a good benchmark to say, oh, another jurisdiction, this is how long it's lasted.
All right, I'd be inclined to keep it in for now.
Understood.
So anything that you see that you want to look at?
No, it was just from the past 2 years' experience, this can be a time-consuming project where we basically start over, or not start over, but have to go through it again and do some things line item.
Well, that's what we're doing.
Right, I know it.
So that's why I'm asking you now.
This
Is there
right
anything
now,
that
I
you
don't,
wanna-
that's pretty tight, I think.
What about video testimony upgrade? I see Scott has joined us. Hello, Scott. Will you remind us what's going on with video testimony upgrade, where we're at?
This one is an IT project.
Oh, it's an IT project, okay.
Steve's here, though.
Steve is here.
Day.
Good day.
So this is the replacement of the video cart that we talked about, the mobile video system
Oh,
that
the
they
one,
have.
we only have one, right?
Okay.
We only have one.
And 4 wheels.
Okay, never mind.
Well, no, I think the point here actually on both of these is, as you've made us well aware, Steve, when we bring technology on, there's ongoing costs to support it, to maintain it, to eventually replace it. Much like we are implementing ongoing maintenance through Chair Kenyon's favorite program, Dude Solutions. I would love to see us be able to track that over time and see those things coming and plan for them throughout the year so that, I mean, I'm sure that's already going on, but I feel like I'm having this conversation sort of at the very end, so.
Well, and to be honest, we've had a lot that have been sort of pent up all over the county, like so many other projects that we have that have been put off. And so you are feeling that, and I feel for you on that. This is tough stuff.
It is, and it has been put off for a while, a lot of things. All right, do we want to go back and start going through A budget and B budget, or do we want to move forward with taking having a conversation around having a foregone hearing?
I'll defer to Commissioner Visser. It sounds like he wants to look at stuff, or?
If we go the A or B route, then the foregone may not be needed if we can find the cuts in there. So that's how I would start it.
Okay, well, we've gone through these. What would you recommend you want to go through then to try to cut? Because we just went through CIP,
supplements?
extraordinary.
Additional supplements, right, Bill?
I can go wherever. I think.
Let's review the supplements.
You're the driver right now. You're the one that wants to do this, so you go ahead and run the show.
Well, let's start at the top with the supplemental.
Okay, so those first ones above the gray line, those are self-supported funds. We're gonna move, those are not affecting our numbers. So in terms of the ones up, I think that you're looking at.
So these are not affecting our numbers.
That first little set that I scrolled past are not, but now everything else is, so.
Okay.
Starting with Sheriff's Office. But I can scroll down as you want. I'll kind of defer to you guys if there's, Commissioner Visser, if there's any particular projects that stand out that you want to discuss.
Well, if I take it line by line, the training facility lease, what is existing now? What is the urgency of initiating the lease now? What in comparison would happen if we put it off a year? That's how I'd approach that one.
I mean, if you want, we can have the sheriff come. I mean, this is the one where that we were
think he's coming our
gifted
way.
the assets that sit in the facility, right?
So they gift us what's inside the facility, but the gifter owns the facility and will lease it to us?
No. Madam Chair, Commissioner Visser, this was gone through during our presentation. I think we presented that in quite some detail. Sorry.
I remember seeing in another one too where you showed the inside views.
Yep, that's it. This is the same property that we talked about in our BOCC meetings that we talked about before we went out and entered into this lease agreement with this company. This is just the ongoing expense each year. We are already up and running in this facility. We have two of our academies running out there right now. So we have our detention academy, we have our patrol academy that just started first week of June, and we have our 32-hour new Archon hand-to-hand class that's being taught across our agency to each one of our commissioned deputies for a total of 32 hours that is now made available because of the mat room and facility that's out there. So it's quite essential.
That part of the presentation, do any other law enforcement jurisdictions use the facility?
So that is, that's an option for us. We talked about that as a potential revenue stream for us. We are currently working with our legal to finalize the lease agreement for that facility. But prior to us acquiring this lease, Forward Movement had a number of agencies that use that facility and pay rent to them to use it. And all of those agencies have come to us and asked us if they can continue that, but we're right now in the middle of finalizing what that lease agreement would look like and how much that would be on an ongoing basis. So yes, we see at least probably 5 or 6 agencies leasing that from us during our open days.
Okay, so I see this then as a good investment and pursuing best practices when we look at other potential users of it, assuming they come on board. I see no reason why not, because they have contacted you, you said.
Yeah, they're
That
just
looks
waiting on
bright.
us now. Matter of fact, there was a couple that wanted to use it over the last couple of weeks, and we've hit pause on that just to make sure that we get our contracts finalized through legal.
Hey, how about number 4? How the priority of that with that property and evidence gun storage?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Visser, that's significantly important for us right now. I think we showed some of the pictures of our existing property and evidence. And if you've ever been back through there on one of the tours, we have our staff climbing step ladders to get stuff up onto shelves and totes, and it's one of those areas that by putting this into practice, it allows us to avoid those risk situations. I see our risk manager here in the back, and I think she would be the first one to tell you, don't put a step ladder on top of a step ladder to load boxes. But yeah, I think it's a great option for us, especially if we're going to stay in that building to accommodate that space.
I don't have any questions on any of the other ones then.
Okay. We've sat through all the presentations, and I know you weren't privy to those, so we drilled these guys. We asked probably way too many questions, so this is your time to kind of catch up and
I'm
feel,
familiar with and
yeah, feel free to
some
go
not, so
through
that's why
and,
I'll ask the questions. Thank you, Sheriff.
yeah,
Certainly, happy to answer any questions.
thank you, appreciate that, yeah. Yeah, so feel free.
Let me know if you want to scroll forward.
Let's go ahead and scroll forward.
Okay,
please.
sounds good. We've got the treasurer's office, the investment asset manager, followed by the assessor's office. You can see these aren't, yeah, not significant in terms of dollar amounts, but kind of go through.
Well done in operations. How about new employee vehicles? Brand new vehicles? Opportunity for surplus vehicles, or how Bob Batista used to get them at the car sales out there to find things? What can you tell me about these vehicles, Scott?
Madam Chair, Commissioners.
Hi, Scott.
A couple of the vehicles are, actually 3 of them are fairly specific utility type trucks with backs on them and ladder racks on them and those kind of things. And when we look at what we're paying for new vehicles as opposed to used vehicles, many times the used vehicles are almost as much as new ones are when we get them under a state contract and can get the monies like that. You know, looking at what we have, it'll cut us down on where we're at with. I did just get an email from Doug Hartman at Emergency Management, and we are going to get he's donating a pickup truck to us. We're taking a pickup truck from them. So, you know, that, and we have another vehicle that's kind of used by our office staff and fills in for other things like that. But, you know, the 2 that are in there right now for the additional 2 for the construction manager, you know, there's probably something we can do with those and make do with something else that we have. That's $64,000 when we're looking at that. But the other vehicles are pretty specific when we're looking at what we're trying to do with a carpenter position and electrician position. And you got to have all their tools. I need something that's secure that things aren't going to get taken out of in the back and disappearing. But, you know, we're all looking to work the same way, make everything happen, make everything work. And, you know, if I give up something, it would definitely be the 2 vehicles for the construction managers. I think I can figure out how to make that work. And
Keep those two and then take the one from Doug Hardman and you'd be okay with?
no, I would give up those two, take the one from Doug Hardman, and I think I can make it work with the vehicles that I have again. So that's, $64,000 worth of vehicles, but I would keep the other three that are specific to the electrician, the carpenter, and the painter.
So you'd X out 65,000 from that total?
Yeah, roughly, I think it was 64,000 if I remember correctly on the numbers for the.
64.
Yeah, 64,000.
So we'd be looking at 151?
Yeah, yes, I think that's correct.
Well, I'd
You can do
appreciate
math
that.
too, Anthony.
Excuse me?
Thank you, Scott, I appreciate that.
Okay.
Okay. You want to
Anything else on the list you wanted to look at?
Thank you, Scott.
lower that?
I would, and I really appreciate your one county attitude. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Everybody's gonna have to give up something, I think that's what it's looking like, so.
So 215, and we'll go down then, okay. So
Okay.
what was it? What's the new amount?
151.
151, so. Right. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Can I play with that, Bill?
Yep.
Don't mess up the spreadsheet.
You know the rules.
Okay.
Ooh,
That looks complicated.
It's beautiful, isn't it?
Yep.
Okay, I don't see anything in information technology. I remember going over that fairly thoroughly.
Wait, back up. Why does it still say 215 on the one time? Is that not totaling, or?
That should change, yeah,
That-
too.
It should change too.
That should change, yeah. That I can
That's
change.
not part of the total.
Okay.
There we go.
Okay.
Good catch.
So you're okay with IT?
I recall whatever we went through on that.
Pretty thorough.
Okay, the expense for the zoning ordinance override. Is anybody here yet from Development Services that can address that?
Thank you. Is the first one zoning ordinance override?
Madam Chair, Commissioners, I'm sorry, I couldn't hear the question.
Yeah, just if you could give a breakdown on the expense for the zoning ordinance rewrite, for $85,000.
His microphone.
Yeah, we received a quote from Claren Associates. They're the consultants who did our comprehensive plan, and I don't have that with me, so I can go up and grab it in my office and come back down, and so I can make sure I'm completely accurate, because I can't remember it off the top of my head. I apologize.
No, that's okay. Do you know if that's a method we've used in the past, or has it been quite a long time since the zoning ordinance have been rewritten?
Yeah, Madam Chair, Commissioners, it's been since the year 2000 since it's been rewritten.
Almost 20 years then.
It's probably
So
time.
it's important to do that one right.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, then the other high one I see in there is the regional plan consultant.
Correct.
And that's like a one-year contract, or what do we have going on there?
Madam Chair, Commissioners, yeah, that was something that we were discussing. I think, was it at?
We already cut
Yeah,
that
we
one
already
down
cut
from
it from
800, if you
Right.
recall.
Okay.
So now it is a 1 year, 400,000.
Okay, I do remember that then. Okay,
8 to 4, cut that
that's
in half.
good enough for that, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Okay.
Here's your commissioners, department administrator, community programs being the main part of this.
Okay, so looking at three of them in there at $50,000. Is that, in your opinion, Commissioner Lachiondo, a bare bones amount that those organizations need at this time, or can we reduce that amount and still be helpful?
So if you recall, the Peer Wellness Center sent us some information. We are now the only county of our size who's not supporting a Peer Wellness Center in the state. Even, Latah County and other entities are supporting their recovery centers. I think we could back it down. It would be minimal in terms of how it would change the ticking and tacking on our making our budgets adjust. I'm sure they'd be grateful for anything they could get because they haven't received money from us in the past. But Canyon County, Latah County, Bannock County, Bonneville County, they all contribute to theirs.
And I think we can come back and revisit the community support coordinator. That's part of our conversation tomorrow. And so we can wrap that into one.
I'm going to make a couple clerical things here, just so you're not surprised by me. These procurement ones, we've addressed the position, so I'm just going to.
I think we all agreed that the contingency operating budget should be increased. That's next on there, up to 1, just for safety precautions.
But we have had it at 500,000 in the past. It's just with a growing county and problems that could occur at any time, unexpected, i.e. a roof, a chill, or whatever.
Still not very much, I know, for the size that we are.
So it behooves us to stay at $1 million. Okay. Wow. And we addressed the green belt by knocking out the Sunrock and the thing, and we're putting a priority on Expo section within this 250,000, so we don't have room to work there. Okay.
Take Scott's skid steer away. I'm sure he needs it.
Okay, then family homeless public, was this the partnership, Diana, with the hospitals, or was this with other entities?
So the number 2 is the conversation that we're going to have tomorrow.
Oh, we're going to expand it on, that's,
Yes.
okay, right.
That's what we're going to take up tomorrow, so we can deliberate.
Where we'll have more info on that study too and so forth. Okay, great. So we'll move on by that, Phil.
Okay. Would you like me, we just went through a lot of positions. Do you want me to go back through the positions, or?
Yeah, we just went through the positions.
Right,
Do you wanna
we
go
already
through those?
did that.
I can go back to the main screen. I can go wherever any one of you would like to see.
I'm good. We've gone.
I'm good.
Yeah, we've gone through those for now.
Okay.
I'm going to go ahead then and suggest that, not knowing that we're going to do anything, we're going to take it, but I think that just to make sure that we have the option, I'm going to suggest that we set up a foregone hearing.
Okay.
I'd like to do that, if I have a second.
You have my second. I think based on the conversation we had, though, in terms of making it project-specific.
I was going to say, that's my question, is for
So
what purpose?
what I want to understand then, based on the presentation that Mitra gave related to design costs, we need 5.8 million for design costs for both the coroner and the public safety building. So what is that? If we put that total in to master facilities plan lump sum, then what does that look like for foregone?
Is that did you say $5.8 million?
5.874.
Just a point of go ahead. Yep.
Mitra?
Good afternoon again.
Again.
So the 5.8 has the $1 million of dairy good purchase in it. So otherwise it's 4.8.
Okay.
So
Specific to design, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, and then the breakdown on the design between the public safety building and the coroner's office?
It's 1.76 and 3.133.
And 3.1's a public safety.
Yep.
Got it. Thank you.
There it is. Okay, so did you want to put some rails on this if we're going to have a hearing? It would be specific to the design costs and the purchase of Marigold?
Marigold or Darigold?
Darigold.
Did you want me to plug in $4.8 million? Sorry. What we just decided?
5.874.
5.874.
I think if.
I want to include the property in there. We can always back it out after
Okay,
deliberations.
got it. Yep, understood.
I'd like to include
Okay,
it all.
yep, sorry, I thought we were double, yep, that makes perfect sense.
Okay. So what's the next process then? Can you, so folks listening at home and whatnot, let's at least walk them through what,
874, get that 74,000 in there.
Plus 300. 300.
And $300?
Yes.
Okay.
what are you looking at?
5.874, 300. Okay.
There you go.
Got it.
Okay.
Okay, so then, Anthony, what are we looking at to balance?
To balance the budget.
5,317,427 in foregone.
5317.
5,317,427, Bill.
427.
Perfect. Oh, not quite. Oh, mine has the position change. Okay.
So do we need to set the hearing for that exact amount, or should we round up in case you made an error?
So I think. Wow.
Oh, yeah.
Nice. In terms of next steps, we can start beginning, I think, and maybe I think what might be beneficial here is we still need to come back. You haven't made any decision on the public-private partnership for family. He's going to meet tomorrow to have that conversation, which is good. We have time reserved tomorrow, so we could come back. That might be also a time if you want to have development services pull together exactly what it is you're talking about here for the projects. I think obviously Mitra kind of presented it, and we can say, okay, this is the amount, this is what we're going to do, and then we will operate off that in terms of scheduling a hearing, which I think we can take. That gives everyone here a chance to pull things together before that. And it also gives you a chance too, between now and tomorrow, to individually reconsider anything, right? We can revisit any conversations rather than just having to do it here. You can individually go through and look through it if you have any questions or want to make any amendments. Obviously, we revisited the sheriff's office earlier. We can do that again tomorrow. So as I mentioned in the break, I mean, it's not unusual that we have to take a recess somewhere during this process to allow people a chance to process things. And I think we're getting down to the final pieces, as what it looks like.
So, Madam Chair, I think this is a question for us and maybe for Judy. We just scheduled something at 1 tomorrow to discuss some personnel and also some legal question on the family homelessness piece. Is there a way to bump that up? Because right now we have budget deliberations from 9 to 3, and those, I mean, there's no point in us, in my opinion, there's no point in us meeting.
At 9, when you haven't had
9.
the other meetings. I agree with you on
So can we bump those meetings up? No, we cannot.
that. Because the agenda.
Oh, okay, okay. So then we wouldn't be looking at finalizing these until 9 a.m. on Friday, based on what my calendar is showing. Is that correct?
We could. Yeah, it depends on when you wrap up your 1 o'clock meeting. We still have time set aside, but as a general point, yeah.
I think tomorrow we only go to like 3.
Yeah, from
We
2
go
to
to
3, I
3,
guess
yeah.
that's
2
the
to 3
point.
is not a whole lot of time.
It's an hour.
Well, it's an hour, so, yeah.
Well, but what do you all want to do?
Well, we have a 3 o'clock that we could possibly, could we move our 3 and our 4 down to 4 and 5? Or 4:30?
3, I'm at the Capitol at 3.
And also, I think because of how we've agendized these, we should wrap up at 3 tomorrow
Okay.
in terms of these times. So even though you might be able to adjust your calendar, I think because
We'll
of how
just
these
move into
meetings were
Friday.
set, we should
So
end at 3.
Friday morning is go time.
Go time.
Okay.
Good news is we have all day Friday set aside, but
Yeah.
let's not use it.
All right, anything else?
No, I think I
cover today?
recognize, and it always is, this is a bit tedious, and, right, it gets down to kind of tough deliberative decisions, so I appreciate your patience in this process, recognizing this is where we always kind of come to, is where you have to kind of settle in and get comfortable with the final numbers. That's always the case. And so our office will begin, we'll go through, make sure we check all the that we're all in sync in terms of tracking everything. And prepare, tomorrow morning we'll have that time. And then I think the questions, if you do have any work for development services specifically to identify on what those costs are, so we can make sure we know. I think sounds like most of that information is already ready.
Yeah.
And then any of those things, if you can resolve tomorrow that we have holds for, whether it's the personnel or the family homelessness, that way we can make some decisions. That's my request.
I think, and we've got, we got all day Friday, so hope you weren't
Yay.
planning on going on any vacations, but I think we can move along.
I think we're very close. I agree with you there. Yeah.
And I want to be very cognizant as we take a look at these numbers, what that's going to cost. Again, not only the average taxpayer, but more importantly, people on lower income levels. So maybe we can get, instead of a medium, we can get a medium range as well as like 200 or 150.
Anthony can even pull you what it'll impact you individually.
With
So
no errors,
how,
no margin of
however you want to
error.
approach this, we can
That'll be
figure that piece out.
You know, one thing that would be helpful for me, because this is where, you know, we have a year-to-year budget cycle, and we have election cycles that, you know, in my case, in Commissioner Visser's case, we're up in 18 months. And so really this long-term planning doesn't lend itself to these kinds of long-term discussions. What would be really helpful for me is to understand if we had built, the county as a whole, a coroner's office, a new coroner's office in 2010, say, what would that cost have been? You know, some of those pieces and parts to really understand we're talking about cost of delay going forward for the current master's facilities plan, but as far as I'm concerned, we are already currently bearing that cost of delay from some prior boards. And I want to be able to articulate that, because the decisions that we have to make this year are not
They're not reflective of
just
snapshot
this
right now.
year. Is that something that I'm looking at Mitra, I'm
be.
looking at you, Phil.
Thank you.
If we could get some of that information, I think that would be really helpful.
I think we need to be specific, but we can be like, if we had built the coroner's office in 2010, when we should have, what's that cost of delay? And the jail expansion, the two projects that we're working on, what's the cost of delay on the jail expansion as well? Those two.
On the other hand, it's not always linear, and it's not always climbing. And what we learned with FACES is that we spent way too much. If we had waited a while, knew the recession was coming, we would have saved a lot of money. And the recession is in the future. So it doesn't always kill you to wait.
In this case, I'm actually looking at this, if we can put ourselves in a position to have a plan in place, if a recession comes into play in 18 to 24 months, we will be ready to take advantage of lower costs.
Right.
Yeah, this is a 2 years out by the time we actually start, building. Okay, anything else?
I'll say in terms of that line, I'll reach out to Mitra and Meg, and we can look at what they have, trying to do that. And I think our office, we've done this in the past at the request of commissions. We can also look at the foregone taxes in terms of the impacts. It's not just that $12 million, but there's a compounding effect of what we haven't taken and the relief that's been provided as a result of that, and can kind of put a value to that, which I think fits in the same line of thinking that you're going, that looking backwards, not just looking forwards. We can pull that information. We've done that before. Okay, I think at this point, it seems like everyone knows what their next steps are.
All right, we'll go ahead then and go into recess. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it.
Thank you.